Thank you, Nader, for that very warm introduction. I want to thank you and Dr. Young and Oxford Analytica for putting together such an event. Nan and I were not able to join you at the beginning. We came in today and we have really felt the spirit, the energy, and the excitement in the room. I am delighted to be with you tonight at this magnificent venue and for this chance to share views with such a distinguished audience. I would like, as I said, to leave here as enlightened from the discussions that we are going to have as each of you. And I believe, given the breadth of experience within this room, I can think of few better audiences to address the state of our world and the challenges we face. As your knowledge and links demonstrate, there is no doubt that our world today is more open and interconnected than ever before. We live at a time of immense opportunities, but it is also a world of great dangers, where a threat to one is a threat to all. The scale and complexity of these shared challenges often seems to have outgrown the framework through which they must be tackled. Our political leaders and institutions of governance and finance are struggling to keep up. For while our challenges are global, our solutions and approaches remain stubbornly national, perhaps even local. This paradox is not new, but it is becoming more important. At the beginning of the new millennium, I was Secretary General then. I asked a group of wise women and men to look ahead and advise the United Nations on threats and challenges that we face and the changes required. I invited them to generate ideas on how the UN and its member states could work together to meet these threats. The panel identified 6 clusters of threats which would demand our attention and response, and left no doubt as to their unprecedented complexity and scale. These 6 groupings were war between states, violence within states, including civil wars, large-scale human rights abuses, and genocide. Thirdly, there were the challenges posed by poverty, infectious diseases, and environmental degradation, which included the impact of climate change, food security, energy and resource scarcity, and loss of biodiversity. We then had the challenges posed by nuclear, radiological, chemical, and biological weapons, and of course, the threat of terrorism. And finally, the growth of transnational organized crime, including the narcotics trade, human trafficking, and piracy, a byproduct, as it were, of fragile states. This is a full and frightening list. And while in the past decade, some of these challenges have diminished, such as war between states, others have loomed larger. Terrorism, as we marked in the somber anniversary on Sunday, continues to cost lives and destroy hopes. Climate change is making extreme poverty, famine, infectious diseases more pronounced and difficult to address. Our continuing failure to cooperate and tackle climate change, an all-encompassing threat threat to our security, health, and economic stability will only worsen these and other threats in coming years. Extreme weather events and speculation in commodity markets have both played a role in the dramatic rise in food prices, increasing food shortages and fueling unrest. Rising energy prices, too, have hit hundreds of millions of people, increasing anger and frustration at governments and corporate leaders. This growing frustration is perhaps one of the most dangerous trends with implications for peace and security everywhere. And it is, of course, the severe economic crisis which has played the biggest role in undermining confidence and trust. Citizens across the world are angry at the private greed and institutional failure which plunged the global economy into the severest crisis for generations. They understand that financial institutions around the world behave recklessly, driven by a culture which puts short-term profits or political gains over long-term benefits. Our global financial institutions, too, turned a blind eye to these dangers. And governments ducked their responsibility to understand, police, and take measures to protect against these risks. Growing inequality in incomes and wealth was decried, but little was done to correct it. Regulation was often painted as unnecessary, as is still the case, and taxation for the wealthy unfair and damaging rather than necessary for more resilient and inclusive societies. The result of these failures is that governments around the world are struggling with massive debts and low growth and very high unemployment. We are seeing as well billions of people who played no part in these mistakes suffering the pain in terms of lost jobs, squeezed incomes, debt, and poorer quality of life. And regrettably, much of our progress towards the Millennium Development Goals is in danger of being rolled back. The risk of world depression may seem behind us, but we face an economy scarred by patterns of continuing low, job poor, and unequal growth, with a strong likelihood of new crises down the line. We can't afford to return to business as usual, something the public, if not always the leaders, seem to understand. So it is no surprise that citizens across the world have taken to the streets to protest about unfairness in this future. They are rightly angry that while financial institutions were seen as too big to fail, they are regarded as too small to matter. This economic crisis and high food and energy prices also played a major part in fueling the extraordinary democratic protests we have seen in North Africa and the Middle East over the last year. Youth unemployment rates, as much as 7 or 10 times the rate of adult unemployment, helps explain the leading role of young people in the movement for freedom and change. But it was also the disconnection between long-serving rulers and their people and the anger at political systems seen as corrupt, unaccountable, and unresponsive to the hopes and concerns of their citizens. The Arab Spring has transformed the political dynamics of the entire region. But I don't need to tell you, this audience, that the future remains uncertain. There will be many challenges before democratic institutions are built and peaceful and prosperous futures can be secured. But the recent events in Tunisia, Egypt, and Libya have put dictators around the world on notice and given hope to all those who want to have a say in their country's future. The protesters' bravery, incredible bravery, must also ensure that we never again believe that the desire for democracy, good governance, rule of law, and respect for human rights is restricted to only some parts of the world. These are universal values, and we must do what we can to help those ambitions be globally realized. It is not just, of course, in dictatorships where there is discontent with political systems or the standards of governance. In many long-standing and stable democracies, citizens are turning their backs on elections. We are seeing a widespread and worrying reduction in voter turnout and increasing support for fringe groups with often divisive programs. This apathy makes it easier for narrow and vested interest to capture the political process, which only further reduces public trust and legitimacy. Ladies and gentlemen, the breakdown in trust between leaders and the people is serious because it undermines our ability to take the hard decisions necessary to tackle the huge challenges we face.